Hey guys, it's Jeff from San Diego Seed Company. Back on the channel. Bridget has some well-deserved time with some family. She's been away, so I'm here in our garden today to talk about one of my favorite snacks in the garden. There's some things that you grow that you have to take it inside and cook it, and then there's other things that just hang off the plant and give you a nice little treat, and those are sour Mexican gherkins, also known as Cucamelons. We're going to tell you everything today on how to grow them, how to keep them alive, and really how to maximize the output so you can get tons and tons of these sweet, sour, delicious fruits. Okay, so first thing first, what is a Cucamelon? If you can see that, let's see if I can get this to focus. Yeah, it looks like a little tiny watermelon. It's actually a cucumber. They're just really small, and if you take a bite, you'll see there's little tiny cucumber seeds in there. So is it a melon? Is it a cucumber? It's a cucumber. It's really small, bite size, and it's a beautiful plant. So I'm going to tell you how to grow this in your own garden. First things first, this is a warm season plant, which means you're going to want to start the seeds either indoors or outdoors after the last threat of frost. Now I know a lot of you guys on the channel don't have frost, so that could be anytime. You can start them as early as December. I would recommend waiting maybe until February or March because they're really going to do well once it gets to be hot, similar to a normal cucumber. So if you start them too early, they're really not going to do much at the beginning of the year. Now all of our seed starting tips still apply to Cucamelons just like any other plant, but you'll notice with this tiny little fruit, the seeds aren't that big. So sometimes we recommend sifting soil. You could probably sift the soil to give yourself a little better chance of germination, but we'll talk about this later. These are a fruit that are going to re-germinate year after year, volunteer in your garden, and I've got big, huge chunks of mulch, so they are pretty vigorous growers. So if you want to sift, go ahead. If you're feeling lazy, it's still going to be just fine. Okay, so here is a pro tip. Anytime you're growing anything that has a tendril, so a vining plant, you're going to want to give that support as soon as you possibly can. I've noticed with our large size cucumbers, if I don't give that support and make it really reach up or even worse, grow out on the ground for a long time, it really doesn't do much at all. So one thing, if you're starting them in pots, put a little stick in there, make a little mini trellis just to give that its safety and security. I don't know if it really cares about security, but it does make it grow faster. So give it a little support from the beginning and you're gonna have a healthier, faster growing plant in the long run. Okay, so just to review, just like any warm season crop, Cucamelons want full sun, which means at least 8 hours, but the more the better. You can't give this plant too much sun. It's gonna need well-draining soil. So what do I mean by well-draining? Meaning if it's too much sand, all the water is gonna run through to the bottom away from the roots. If it's too much clay, it's gonna hold on to too much water and get waterlogged, get root rot. So you really want to get that good balance of soil, which if you've watched the channel, you know how to get that. You add compost. Every season, twice a year, compost, compost, compost. If you're having problems with fertility, compost is the #1 thing that you can do to help your soil give you better, healthier plants. The other thing we should talk about with this plant is fertility. Just like anything that has a fruiting body that has to turn their flower into a fruit, it needs fertility. So how do you get that? With a organic granular fertilizer before you plant, and then a organic, like a fish emulsion liquid fertilizer according to the directions on the bottle throughout the growing season. Now, if you've been a gardener for years, you've really got healthy soil and been amending over the years, you've probably got enough fertility to grow this plant with no fertilizer, but if you're just starting out, definitely hit it with those two that I just mentioned. Okay, so you've successfully transplanted your Cucamelon from a pot to the ground and it's growing. You've got your mini trellis there. Now I will say, if you are just gonna directly sow the seeds, I would do your best to clear the mulch and give it a good environment to actually pop through the soil. Once it does that, put a little trellis on it, but you'll notice here that I have a little bigger setup of trellis. I've actually put my tomato cages to good use. If you've heard Bridget on the channel, she does not like these for tomatoes, but I didn't want these to go to waste, so I've used them for the Cucamelons. And you can see they're growing all over this on every vertical and circular area. These guys send out so many tendrils. They are going to grow and grow and grow, and they'll really take over whatever you put on them. So if you like these fruits, once you taste them, I think you will, I recommend giving them the biggest trellis that you can get your hands on. They will produce tons and tons of tiny little fruit that you can snack on all year round. Okay, so one thing to note on trellis, some of you, when you hear the word trellis, you might be thinking of that lattice, the crossing like vinyl, and sometimes it's wood, things that you see grapes growing on. For something like this, that wouldn't work. What you need is something small enough that the tendril can make its way around. So this little, I don't know what gauge metal this is on the tomato, is perfect. Any type of cattle panel or a chain link fence, so anything that has something small that the tendril can make its way around and really lock onto is going to work just fine. Okay, so the last thing we need to talk about for you guys to grow these in your own yard is disease. What should you be looking out for? In my personal experience with this plant, we give it full sun, we give it plenty of airflow, we give it plenty of water, make sure it's got fertile soil to grow in. I have seen no disease on it. And that makes me so happy, because so many other things like tomatoes and squash, you're constantly battling either powdery mildew or downy mildew or bugs. This plant grows so quickly, no bug could ever keep up with the amount of green matter that it puts out to do any damage. So you don't have to worry about bugs. You may encounter powdery mildew just because the nature of the leaf, it's got the little fuzz on it and it's a broadleaf. So it is susceptible to powdery mildew. If that does happen, just like all of our other recommendations with powdery mildew, remove the diseased leaves. We've had really good luck with half milk, half water spray, sprayed once a week. Science doesn't even know why that works, but for us, we have noticed a difference with powdery mildew. It just isn't as conducive to grow the mildew on the leaf, something about the milk. So give that a try. I mean, you can always do neem oil. There's all kinds of sprays that are antifungals and anti-mildews. At San Diego Seed Company, we really try to err towards not spraying if we can. And like I said, with this plant, you're gonna have a lot of production. And if it does get diseased, by that time, you're gonna have so many quarts and quarts of Cucamelons that it won't matter that much. Okay, so that does it for Cucamelons. Like I said earlier in the video, if you grow these and you get a successful plant with a lot of fruit, what's gonna happen is these fruit are gonna fall to the ground. You're not gonna catch them all. They're gonna overwinter underground. Once the soil temperatures rise and you get those spring rains, they're gonna pop up again. I recommend, if you do wanna try Cucamelons, I would do a little bit of thinking ahead of time to grow them in a place where you're gonna wanna grow them year after year after year, because they're gonna come back. You could easily transplant them and move them to another spot, but you're always gonna have to be battling pulling them out if you put them in a place where you don't want them to be. So think ahead, get Cucamelons, give them a try. I promise you're not gonna regret it.